Is math related to science?
Math is the language of the universe.
You are now officially an astronaut.
Is it a 10 out of 10? That's my review.
10 out of 10.
You definitely go for it. 10 out of 10.
Well, it was very profound. I don't know if you've seen Katy Perry talk about it, but she's basically a guru now.
Yeah.
I brought a Daisy because I have so much love for my daughter Daisy, and I have so much love for Mother Earth. And I believe you can see the beauty in the Mother Earth in a single resilient Daisy.
What were her findings? That's my question.
Well,
what
she
did she
brought a
learn?
Daisy, which is super important. It shows you how quick the flight was. The dead Daisy that's like snipped from its life source.
In a scene that blended billionaire ambition with celebrity spectacle, 3 high-profile women, Katy Perry, Gayle King, and Lauren Sanchez, boarded Blue Origin for an 11-minute space voyage that quickly devolved from historic to hilarious in the public eye. What was billed as a celebration of female empowerment turned out to be a tone-deaf marketing stunt that felt more like a luxury amusement ride than a leap for womankind. Katy Perry's involvement alone drew massive attention, not just for her fame, but for the theatrical nature of her participation. When she returned to Earth and dropped to her knees to kiss the ground, claiming the experience changed her forever, social media users erupted with mockery. Her dramatics sparked instant comparison to the Apollo 13 crew.
Men flew the remotely operated the rocket and designed it and created it. So yes, it was a ride for you.
You say to people who think that this was frivolous or just a ride, I think the message that it sends is very, very powerful. And the people that say that, by the way, weren't there.
You're so powerful. That's right. You're exactly right. The only people that were there were Hollywood celebrities like the Kardashians and Katy Perry. If you're going to sit here and demand to be taken seriously, we demand to be taken seriously, well, maybe don't do this after your craft lands back on the Earth, which, if the official story is to be believed, we'll get to that in just a second, was only in space for 3 minutes. Oh, wow. What a valiant explorer.
Katy!
She blew a flower and then she kissed the Earth. Okay.
Except this wasn't a life-threatening mission. It was an 11-minute press event aboard a remote-controlled capsule funded by one of the richest men on Earth. With headlines declaring the launch as a revolutionary moment for women in science, the internet's sarcasm machine went into overdrive. Tweets, memes, and videos questioned whether floating in zero gravity for a few minutes justified the hyperbole. The public wasn't buying the narrative that this was progress. It looked more like privilege in orbit. Olivia Wilde reposted an image of Perry's dramatic return with biting commentary. Amy Schumer joked she'd been invited to space last minute, and Martha Stewart dug up her own zero-G footage and set it to a Katy Perry song, slyly calling out the absurdity of it all. What was meant to be an inspiring moment instead became the latest viral joke, amplified by influencers and commentators who saw through the PR sheen. These weren't astronauts, they were passengers, and the backlash was only beginning. The training they received was a crash course in buckling seatbelts and learning how to pose for photos in a capsule. In contrast, real astronauts undergo years of physical, mental, and scientific preparation. They study propulsion systems, survive underwater simulations, and train for emergency landings. The idea that Perry, King, and Sanchez could be placed in the same category as Sally Ride or Valentina Tereshkova was laughable. Critics compared their mission to a theme park ride, fun, flashy, and ultimately forgettable. When media outlets began calling them a female flight crew, aerospace professionals pushed back hard. The capsule was entirely automated. There was no piloting, no manual override, no responsibility. They were observers in a pre-programmed loop, not explorers paving the way for scientific advancement.
And these are all of my astronaut girly friends. We are the Taken Up Space crew.
5, 4, command engine start, 2, 1, ignition. Liftoff.
Yet the headlines told a different story, and that disconnect lit a firestorm online. The moment that truly ignited public fury came when Gayle King publicly snapped at those calling it a ride. In a post-flight interview, King insisted it was a journey, not an amusement trip, and claimed the mission would inspire a generation of young girls to reach for the stars. But her tone, dripping with condescension, backfired spectacularly. Her insistence on gravitas only highlighted the gap between image and reality. Audiences weren't inspired, they were insulted. Gail's call for respect fell on deaf ears, as users pointed out the luxurious nature of the trip and how tone-deaf it felt in the context of everyday economic struggle.
The best part was when we got back in our seats after 0 G's, Katy sang "What a Wonderful World."
She did?
Isn't that nice?
Oh, come on.
She sang "What a Wonderful World." I see
Did you just all
dreams.
start
Oh,
crying?
yes.
Oh.
Because we'd been asking her to sing all the time, and she wouldn't. And then, because everybody said, sing Roar, sing Fireworks. And she said, it's not about me. I wanted to talk about the world.
Wow.
For the average viewer, the idea of space travel remains a fantasy. Watching billionaires and celebrities treat it like a novelty struck a nerve. But perhaps the most ironic twist came from Lauren Sanchez, Bezos' fiancée, who declared with tears in her eyes that women should take up space. Delivered with emotional sincerity, the statement became an unintentional punchline. Critics pounced, noting that Sanchez didn't represent the average woman. She represented wealth, access, and connections. Her seat on the flight was earned not through merit or achievement, but through proximity to the man bankrolling the rocket. The symbolism rang hollow. Her sobbing reflections about Earth's silence and beauty were clipped into TikToks mocking her detached perspective. As users pointed out, taking up space was a fine message, just not from someone whose space was handed to her on a platinum platter. Meanwhile, Oprah Winfrey's tears, broadcast live as she watched the launch, were replayed endlessly on major networks. The media's gushing coverage continued in spite of the ridicule, creating a stark contrast between institutional praise and grassroots scorn. Outlets labeled the flight historic, groundbreaking, and a milestone for feminism. But the visuals told a different story. Women in custom-designed suits giggling in zero gravity, taking selfies, and rehearsing sound bites. This wasn't the first woman in space. It was the first influencer brigade in space, and it showed. Viewers, particularly women, weren't buying it.
What's up, guys? It's Benny. There's an old Shakespearean line that goes like this: "The woman doth protest too much." Gayle King is somebody who allegedly went to space this week. She's an astronaut. No, she's not. We're going to cover that in just a second. But Gayle King was on TV right after her little space trip. And she decided to rip into people that said she didn't actually go to space. It seems a little on edge.
What do you
for
think
her.
when people say, oh, it's frivolous? Number one, they call it a ride, which I find very irritating because they never say men went for a ride. What do
I have to stop. Men flew your dick rocket. You flew up into space in a little dick rocket. You weren't piloting anything. You weren't providing any service to the actual craft itself. You were a you're tourists. It's like me booking a commercial flight and saying I flew the plane. You did it.
Real progress, they argued, comes from accessibility, education, and genuine opportunity, not from celebrity tourism. The mission became symbolic of a larger issue: elite figures co-opting social justice narratives to sell personal branding. And branding was clearly central to this endeavor. Blue Origin's promo clips featured slow-motion shots of the capsule launch, orchestral music, and teary-eyed testimonials. But what they didn't show was the lack of any scientific contribution, exploration, or real risk. Everything was automated. There was no control panel, no co-pilot, no tasks. The entire experience was curated for maximum media impact, not scientific output. Experts weighed in, stating plainly that this flight did not meet the bar for space mission. The only thing achieved was visibility. Visibility for a brand, for Bezos, and for his chosen passengers. And as that reality sank in, criticism evolved from mockery to genuine frustration. Social media accounts began calling it out as inspiration washing, a term used when powerful entities repackage self-serving actions as motivational content. The more Blue Origin and its passengers insisted they were making history, the louder the internet laughed, as Katy Perry floated in zero gravity singing "What a Wonderful World." A line of parody videos followed. TikTokers reenacted the scene with brooms, leaf blowers, and green screens.
Here on the New Shepherd. I think I'm gonna sing. I'm gonna sing a little bit. I gotta sing in space.
YouTubers stitched together interviews from the flight, overlaid with sci-fi music and sarcastic captions. Reddit threads mocked their intense astronaut training, and Twitter erupted with jokes comparing the capsule ride to Disney's Space Mountain. Even celebrities began distancing themselves, with some unfollowing Sanchez and Perry altogether. What was supposed to be a cultural touchstone had become a viral embarrassment. Behind the scenes, Blue Origin's PR team reportedly scrambled to redirect the narrative, offering new interviews and pushing media outlets to reframe the story. but the damage was done. Instead of launching a new era for women in space, the flight launched 1,000 jokes. It illuminated how disconnected celebrity culture has become from the realities of the average person. And while the capsule reached suborbital space, its mission fell flat back on Earth. The harshest critiques came not from trolls, but from women in STEM fields who saw the event as a missed opportunity. Instead of spotlighting women engineers, pilots, or scientists, the spotlight was given to celebrities. The message was clear: fame still trumps function in space, and that realization left a bitter taste. The public wasn't opposed to women in space, they were opposed to the idea that branding a rich woman's ride as empowerment somehow equals progress. In the end, this wasn't about innovation, science, or exploration. It was about status, spectacle, and selfies. And while the capsule may have returned safely, its legacy crash-landed into a field of memes, think pieces, and lasting disappointment. History wasn't made that day, but mockery certainly was.